I arrived in East Breer on a cold, chalky morning in April 1888. The type of morning when the mist doesn't go away. It simply becomes lodged in your bones. My boots were soaked through by the time I stepped off the cart, and the heels of my hands were already raw from gripping the side rails too tightly during the overnight ride, but I had nowhere else to go. Not since Mama passed last winter. Not since the landlord padlocked the cottage and left me to the wind. So when the posting came through the parish wall hiring girls 14, and up, matchwork, meals, and lodging provided, apply at East Briar Works. I tore it down with shaking fingers. They say the East Briar Match Factory has 3 things: heat wages and beds. That's more than I'd had in weeks. I wasn't even asked my name by the foreman. He simply looked at my hands, flipped them over as if examining a piece of meat, and then yelled, "Tamsin, you will proceed to table 7. Daisy will get you set." Daisy was small, wiry, and moved like she'd been born in soot. She didn't smile. No one did. She handed me a wooden tray filled with thin sticks and a tin of thick, chalky paste. "Dip and twist," she said. "Fast as you can, but not too much of the white. Causes lung burns." I didn't ask what the white was. I assumed I would find out. The first shift lasted 14 hours. I used the old yard bell's toll to count each one. It rang sharp and high once an hour, no more, no less, like it was reminding you the day was not your own. There were 12 of us at table 7, all girls. The oldest couldn't have been. Over 20. Their pale faces were caused by more than just factory dust. It was as if the color had been removed from them a long time ago. And their lips, God help me, their lips looked wrong, cracked and dry. A sickly glow appeared in the hollow above the chin of some of them, particularly the quieter ones, as if someone had placed a small candle behind their skin. I told myself it was imagination. The gaslight flickered, and there were no windows in the factory. Shadows did strange things when your body was tired. At supper, I sat alone, until Daisy dropped into the seat beside me with a clatter of her tin bowl. Tooth-chipping bread and boiled cabbage. She didn't look at me when she spoke. "Don't talk to Nellie or Lizzie or anyone at table 4. "Why?" She finally looked up. Her eyes were as dull and gray as an unclear sky. "Due to their inclusion on the list." "Which list?" But she just shook her head and stuffed cabbage into her mouth. That night in the dormitory, I couldn't sleep. The mattress smelled of damp straw and old blood. I lay awake, listening to the sounds of a dozen other girls trying not to cry too loudly. I then noticed it at around midnight. Lizzie, from table 4, rolled over across the room. Her back to the wall, and for a second, just a flicker. Her mouth parted slightly and the inside of it glowed. It was like a dim lantern had been placed behind her teeth, faint, greenish, flickering. She didn't seem to notice. I pulled the blanket over my face and pressed my hand to my chest to stop the trembling. In. I asked Daisy if she had also seen it that morning. She didn't dispute it. I had no idea what she meant by go, but I would find out. All she said was, "Some girls light up before they go. Some don't, you'll see." I had discovered 2 things by the end of my 3rd day. First, your fingers never stop aching, not even in sleep. Everything is covered in a thick, chalky, sweet-smelling dipping paste. It penetrates the soft skin between your knuckles and beneath your nails. No matter how much I scrubbed, the white remained clinging to me like a second skin. Second, the dust was everywhere. It floated in the air like snow that had lost its color. It coated our trays, our hair, our lips. You tasted it when you breathed. It settled into the creases of your eyelids. The girls called it angel powder. Some said it made you dream strange things. Others said it kept you from dreaming at all. On the morning of the fourth day, Mora collapsed. She had been at the far end of Table 7 working faster than most. She was tall and quick-fingered with a braid. It was woven so tightly that it resembled a noose down her back. One minute she was talking something about her sister in Southport, and the next she staggered sideways, knocking her tray to the floor. We all froze. The pace hissed softly as it splashed against the brick. Now Mora was coughing, initially dry and then wetter. She trembled and doubled over her arms. And then we saw it. White foam bubbling up from her mouth and discoloring her apron. Not spit, not bile. It looked exactly like the paste from the tins. Someone screamed, the foreman. Arrived within seconds, not to help her, no, just to move her. She was hauled off the ground like a bag of grain by two men wearing dark coats. Her feet left faint streaks across the dust-covered tiles. By lunch, a new girl had taken her place. Where had they taken Mora? I asked Daisy. To the nurse, she muttered. What kind of nurse? The type that has keys. Daisy showed me her arm that evening. In the candlelight of the dormitory, she rolled up her sleeve slowly and turned her wrist over. There was a light green sheen on the underside of her forearm, just below the skin. It shimmered slightly when she moved, like the glow from moss on old gravestones. How much time? I whispered. 3 weeks, she said. The gums came first, followed by the rash, and now this. Does it hurt? Only when I chuckle. We were silent as we sat. Then she leaned in closer right before blowing out the candle. There's a girl was here named Bridget Crane. She was the first to experience an all-over glow. They said she laughed in her sleep long after her jaw had fallen off. I stared at her, thinking she was joking, but Daisy didn't blink, didn't smile, just snuffed the light. Bridget Crane. I started hearing her name everywhere after Mora vanished. Not spoken aloud, not quite. Whispered, passed in the quiet folds between shift bells. Scribbled in chalk behind the wash basins. I once noticed BC 1888 lightly engraved on the underside of a stair, the first to grin excessively. On the 7th night, I asked Daisy about her once more. In the chilly restroom, we were taking off our work dresses, steam rising from the rusted pipes as if the walls were trying to breathe. Daisy stared at the mirror as she answered, but not at her reflection. They say she worked at Table 4, back before I got here. She was a quiet, courteous girl who never missed a shift. I nodded, waiting. She started glowing early. Daisy continued. Tea first, then lips. She laughed when the doctor came to see her. Not a mad laugh, just like something tickled her. They said she couldn't stop. By the end of it, her mouth was cracked to the ears. She turned to face me, then looked pale and serious. She allegedly bit off her own jaw at the hinge because she felt as though something was crawling behind it, and she had to get rid of it. I almost gagged. That's not possible. Daisy gave a shrug. They say Mr. Camp had the body taken to the lower room near Furnace B. Furnace B. I'd heard that name before, too. It wasn't used anymore. The floorboards near that section creaked with heat, even though the fires beneath had long been doused. And there was a door near. It, thick and iron, banded with a rusted keyhole and no handle. The door I heard whispering behind, the same door I had seen the night I arrived. Ellie. I told myself, you're letting exhaustion make stories out of shadows. But the next day, when I passed by the southern corridor to retrieve fresh paste tins, I saw something that chilled my blood. A trail. A thin white streak like paste dragged by a bare heel, leading from the back hall to that locked door near Furnace B. I didn't follow it. Not back then. However, I couldn't get it off my mind. That night, when all the girls were asleep, I opened the drawer of the nightstand beside my bunk. Someone had carved into the inside wall with a pin or nail lines that had been darkened with soot for emphasis. It was a list of names: Violet Gray, Elsie Marin, Bridget Crane, Maura Hale, and below that, E.T. I gazed at those initials. They were mine. Ellie Tamson. Someone before me, maybe even watching me, believed I was next. There was no handle, no signage, and no knocker, just a thick iron keyhole rimmed with rust and black soot. But once you knew to look for it, you couldn't stop. It was always present and always incorrect, drawing the eye like a missing tooth in a smile. On the morning of the 9th day, I passed that corridor again. I wasn't supposed to. It was off limits for anyone not in maintenance. But I'd volunteered to return an empty tin tray to the furnace room. It was only a 5-minute task. I moved more quickly than necessary, but I slowed down as I approached. Near the door. Warmth emanated from the bricks, but there was no sound behind it. And something else, a smell, not sulfur, not smoke, something far sweeter. Rotting sweet like meat soaked in molasses and left too long. It curled into my nostrils and stayed there even after I'd returned to the line. I asked Daisy directly later in the dorm, "What's behind the door?" She didn't pretend not to know which one. "Don't ask that," she muttered, picking at the loose hem of her sleeve. But they took Bridget. Through there after her jaw. And Violet, too, when she started coughing green. I froze. Violet Gray from the list of names. Daisy's lips pressed into a tight line. She wrote a journal, she said finally. Pages of it. Said she was documenting everything for when someone finally asked. She concealed it beneath the old bed frame in the crawlspace in the attic. Why didn't anyone turn it in? She disappeared before she could. My breath caught and Mara Daisy nodded slowly. The third person they went through, that was her. Door. I saw it with my own eyes. Like the chimney sweepers, there are 2 men in coats. She was grasped by the arms by one. The other had a sack ready. I felt cold all over. Nobody speaks. They don't have to. I couldn't sleep that night after curfew because Daisy said, "Everyone here knows the rules. You work until you glow, then you leave. And if you glow too much, you don't come back." The air in the dormitory was thick and sour, and I kept waking to the faint sound of coughing wet and gurgled from the far end of the room. So I rose, barefoot, silent, and I crept to the stairwell at the end of the corridor. The attic was locked as expected, but the paneling above the old linen shelf was loose, so loose that it groaned under my fingers when I pressed against it. I pulled it back. Dust, cobwebs, splinters, and then I discovered it under a shattered tile. Soft with age, a cloth-bound journal. The initials V.G. scratched faintly into the cover. The pages crackled when I opened them. There were cramped, brief entrances inside, and smudged but legible. Names, dates, symptoms, and a final passage written in a hurried scrawl. It is untrue to say that it begins in the teeth. It starts in the breath. When the white gets into your blood, the light finds you. And when it finds you, it stays. I saw my own eyes glowing in the window last night. I think I have 3 days left. I won't go through that door. I won't let them take me down there. I closed the journal and held it to my chest. I didn't know what was behind. That door, but Violet had, and she would prefer to disappear than confront it. I read the journal beneath the blankets, a stub of candle hidden inside my cupped palms. The light barely touched the pages, but I didn't need brightness to feel the weight of Violet's words. The early entries were factual, methodical. She had been a careful girl, maybe a clever one, too. She noted how many hours each shift it took for nosebleeds, gum blisters, and sore bones to first appear. She wrote about how some girls' lips started to glow in the dark only after they stopped speaking. how the veins themselves shimmered softly as their skin thinned behind their ears. However, her tone changed as the pages turned, becoming more terrified and frantic. Tonight they took Elsie. She screamed, but no one helped. We were told it was a fever, but she just started glowing, bright like a matchstick left too long in flame. They waited until the others were asleep. She begged, then she was quiet. The next page was half torn. Mr. Kemp watches at meal hour. He notes who isn't hungry. The hunger leaves you last just before the light takes hold. It's not starvation, it's replacement. It's as if the glow feeds on something. The entries that caused my hands to shake followed. After midnight, I hid in the supply closet. I heard them dragging something up from the cellar. Something heavier, not a body. It clinked, it rattled. And then the smell, like sugar and bone dust. I continued to read. The old girls talk about the white feast, they say. Once a month something is fed below. The light doesn't just kill, it ripens. The last hour is when the body glows brightest. That's when it's harvested, collected. My stomach turned at the word. Then came her final entry. Not at all like the others. The handwriting had changed. It sloped downward, shaky, broken. The ink was smeared as if from a trembling hand or tears. Night 21. My mouth burns. My teeth hurt. Even when I don't want to, I smile. In the mirror, my breath creates smoke trails. They say the light is. Lovely, but it seems hungry to me. I won't go through that door. I'm not going to shine for them. If I have to, I'll burn the light out of me before they can use it. 5. The next 5 pages were blank. I sat up slowly, wrapping the journal in an old linen rag and slid it beneath my mattress. My pulse wouldn't settle. Every time I blinked, I saw her words. Even when I don't want to. I smile. I'll burn the light out of me. It was more than just a disease or poison. It was customary. The next morning, Mr. Kemp watched us as we lined up for work. His hands were folded behind his back as he looked at each girl's face, searching for brightness rather than beauty or even strength. It started with Maura's hands, or rather, what was left of them, and for the first time I thought, maybe it's not a factory. Maybe it's a farm, and we're not workers. We're crops. I saw her again on the 12th day, though she wasn't supposed to be there. The rumor had been that she'd been taken to the nurse, or worse. But just before the lunch bell, she returned. No statement, no justification. Head down, sleeves rolled up to the elbows, he just appeared at the end of the table 7. I almost didn't recognize her. Her skin had changed. It looked thinner, drier, as if stretched too tight over bone. Her fingers twitched even when still. The knuckles were rimmed with faint green, not quite visible in the gaslight. But when the overhead lamp flickered, I saw it clear. Her palms glowed. I tried not to stare. However, Daisy's voice was hardly audible over the clinking of trays as she leaned in. They had no right to bring her back. By what do you mean? She's gone past the quiet stage, Daisy said. They never bring them back after that. That night, the gas lights cut out just before curfew. The hiss from the pipes sputtered, then silence. Someone giggled nervously in the dark. Then we saw them, shapes. There were 4 or 5 girls standing motionless close to the bathroom door. God, even though their faces were hidden, their mouths gleamed, pale, phosphorescent. Their lips opened and closed slowly like fish gasping through glass. There were 2 gentle pools of greenish-white light in one girl's eyes. No one screamed. Nobody made a move. We were aware of the regulations. If you see someone glowing, you don't talk to them. You pretend to sleep if they try to touch you. If they speak, you don't answer. You don't pay attention. Later, as we huddled under our blankets, too terrified to breathe, Daisy told me that. They're not all the way gone. Yet, she said, but they're close. The light, it gets into their words, into their thoughts. It also remembers your name if you let it get close. I gazed at her. What happens when they fully glow? Daisy didn't answer right away. She reached into the hem of her mattress and pulled out a small pouch wrapped in flannel. She opened it. Inside was a tooth. Small, human. The root still stained with blood. It was glowing, not brightly, not like fire, but like moonlight held in glass. I pulled it out when my gum started to burn, she whispered. It's slower now, but I don't think it's stopped. I stared at it, couldn't look away. And Mara, I asked, she's past the quiet stage. What will happen next? Daisy's voice was hollow. They call it the harvest spark when a girl starts glowing too strong, too sudden. She is taken. They say the light burns out of her all at once, like a match just before it dies. She wrapped the tooth again and tucked it back beneath her mattress. There's no coming, she continued once it ignited. Mora persisted for an additional 2 days. She didn't say anything more to anyone. Her hands stayed wrapped in linen strips, and her lips were always closed tight like she was holding something in, but I saw her fingers twitch under the table. And when the bell rang for shift's end, I noticed her shadow stretched longer than it should have, curving in strange ways beneath the flickering gaslight. It wasn't the work that broke her, it was something else, something beneath her skin. On the evening of the 14th day, I heard footsteps when I woke up. Not girls' boots, but heavy ones. 2 sets moving down the dormitory hallway, slow and deliberate. I slipped out of bed and crept to the end of the corridor, hiding behind the half door to the washroom. From the narrow slats, I watched. They were men, not workers, not supervisors. Outsiders dressed in dark overcoats, stiff collars. The lamps obscured their faces. They appeared flat, like paper figures caught in the middle of a flame, due to the bright yellow light they carried. Mora's eyes were half open and her body was limp, mouth glowing. I saw it clearly this time. The light from her lips pulsed like a lantern behind frosted glass. Her fingernails flickered 2 tiny sparks beneath translucent skin. She wasn't resisting. I could hear her humming softly and without saying anything. They led her down the hallway toward the southern corridor toward the locked door near Furnace B. They had a key and they used it. With a long, metallic shriek, the door opened and closed with the sound of stone grinding against stone. After that, I didn't sleep. Not that night. Not for many after. The next morning, Mora's name was gone from the roll call. Nobody brought her up. For hours, her tray at table 7 remained empty until a small, shaking girl with red hair showed up. Daisy didn't even look at her. I discovered it behind a cracked tile in the brick wall, concealed beneath a layer of ash and white powder, while sweeping close to the furnace rooms after my shift. I noticed the edge of a buried object. I dug with a broken spoon and uncovered Mora's meal ticket. Each worker was assigned one a brass medallion used to collect dinner that has their name and table number on it. Hers was scorched at the edges, but the letters were still visible. Mhal T7. That would never have been left behind. Nobody. Unless they didn't expect to eat again. I wrapped it in a scrap of cloth and hid it in my apron. That night I asked Daisy what they did with the ones they took through the door. She looked at me a long time, then whispered, "They say the light has to go somewhere, and the ones who glow the brightest, they burn cleanest." No one dared to refuse them, even though it began as a whisper in the laundry room over the rust-stained basins and in the bread line where the ends grew mold. In the dormitory, between coughs and teeth grinding in the dark, strike. The word flickered like the glow behind the girl's eyes, but it was never uttered. Unseen, undeniable, the one who finally said it was Edith Merrill. She was tall, coal-eyed, 18 or perhaps 19, and the kind of girl who, if the world had allowed it, would have become a teacher or a poet. Her. Instead, the world had sent her here with a limp in her left foot and ink-stained knuckles. She had been working in the phosphorus rooms for 2 years. Too long, Daisy whispered. Too long for anyone to still be alive. And yet Edith didn't glow, not even faintly. She was the only one I ever saw chew her bread slow and stare back at the supervisors like she wasn't afraid of burning. That night, 3 of us met in the laundry attic. Me, Daisy, and Edith, lantern light off, voices hushed. The journal of violet gray between us opened to the page about the white feast. Edith read it silently, then said, "They're harvesting us." Daisy nodded. "We've all known. We just didn't have proof." Edith tapped the page. "We do now." She pulled something from her apron, a folded square of paper. Names, dates, cross-referenced with the Facto's incident log, which she'd stolen from the foreman's office weeks ago. 17 girls, she said. Taken. Not sick, not buried, just removed, and every 4 weeks like clockwork. She looked at me. "You were supposed to be next." I felt my throat close. "Why?" She held up a mirror the size of her palm. "You've started to glow, Ellie. Only a little around your mouth. It's faint, but it's there." I turned away. I didn't want to believe it. "They'll wait a few more days," Edith said. "Then they'll come. Unless we make the first move." Daisy leaned forward. "You mean escape?" Edith shook her head. "I mean strike, refuse to work, demand inspection, make. Noise, the kind they can't bury. But they'll lock us in," I said. "They'll call it hysteria. They'll bring in the men with coats and keys." "Let them," Edith said, her voice sharp and low. "Let them try to shut us up. We've already been dying quiet. It's time they heard us burn." The silence that followed was longer than a prayer. Finally, Daisy spoke. "Then we'll need proof. More than names, more than stories." Her voice was shaking, but she didn't stop. "Well, need to go through the door, I didn't. Intend to see it, but once you start listening to the walls of East Briar, you discover that they whisper more after midnight." That night, 4 days after Maura disappeared, one day after Edith said the word "strike out loud," I heard them louder than ever. Footsteps, wheels turning, and something softer, dragging. I slipped from my cod heart, thooting so hard I thought it might wake the others. Daisy stirred once, but she didn't open her eyes. I moved barefoot past the creaking stairwell and slipped behind the old linen. Crates just beyond the view of the south corridor. From there I could see everything. Silas Kemp, the man who never soiled his hands, was pulling a cart, not pushing, pulling like it was sacred. His face shone as he moved through the darkness like a man in a trance. Behind him, 2 workers in stiff coats carried something wrapped in coarse brown cloth. It was shaped like a body, not stiff, but folded. My breath caught as they reached the iron-banded door, near Furnace B. Mr. Kemp drew a long key from a chain at his waist, longer than I thought it would be, almost ceremonial. The door groaned open. The smell hit me from 20 feet away, sickly sweet like sugar burnt too long, mixed with something earthy like rotting hay soaked in blood. It coated the tongue, stuck in the throat. The men entered, carrying the bundle. But just before the door closed, I heard it. A word, not English, not anything I understood. Kemp whispered it softly, reverently. If then again, as if. Repeating a verse, "Let the light be fed. Let the breath be taken." The door shut. I didn't move for a long time. When I finally crept back to the dormitory, my legs trembled so badly I had to crawl the last few steps. I climbed into bed and lay shaking under the covers, heart pounding like a trapped bird. By morning, the bundle was gone. The furnace room smelled of pine oil and ashes, as if someone had tried too hard to clean something that couldn't be scrubbed away, and on the wall near the old storage shelves, a new marking had been scratched into the brick. A matchstick drawn upside down, burning from both ends. We went in on a Sunday. No work, no overseers, no carts creaking in the dark. Just the slow breath of a factory pretending to sleep. It was past 2 a.m. when Edith lifted the latch to the maintenance hall. Daisy had stolen the ring of backup keys 2 days prior from the belt of a drunk foreman slumped near the latrines. We didn't speak, just nodded. 3 of us, me, Daisy, Edith. We wore extra rags. Around our mouths, soaked in vinegar. Edith said it might help with the air. Daisy carried a broken wrench as a weapon. I had Violet's journal tucked in my coat, pressed tight against my ribs like a relic. The key slid into the iron door near Furnace B, like it had been waiting. It clicked once, then opened. The heat hit first, not like a fire, but like something that had been sealed for too long. Ancient warmth, thick, unnatural. We stepped into a narrow stairwell, stone-lined and dripping. It twisted downward deeper than any cellar we knew of, at least 3 stories. The deeper we went, the more the smell returned. That sickly sweet rot layered with copper and candle wax. At the base, a chamber. No windows, no torches, but glowing. Faint green light bled from cracks in the brick. The source impossible to tell. It pulsed faintly like the heartbeat of something old and breathing just beyond the walls. In the center of the room stood a stone table. I knew it was a table only by shape. It was long, rectangular, stained, dark at the edges. 4 iron loops were bolted into the corners. Restraints rusted and worn thin from use. On the far side, a shelf lined with tools, pliers, clamps, a rusted brace once used for turning teeth. But it was what sat in the corner that made Daisy drop the wrench. A jawbone, charred, still wet, nestled atop a scorched cloth like some kind of offering. And even in that dim, haunted light, it glowed. Not the bone, not the blood, the teeth, 6 of them still. Intact. They shimmered slightly like tiny lanterns. Edith leaned in and said, "This is what they're after." I went to the wall and saw dozens of markings carved into the stone, including names, dates, and symbols that didn't belong to any language I knew. One of them had been circled 3 times in a dark substance. I felt Daisy was trembling now. "We need to go. We've seen enough," Edith said, pointing to the shelf. Denis. I hesitated, then stepped forward and picked up the smallest molar from the jaw. It was warm in my hand. Too warm. I wrapped it in linen and stuffed it in my pocket. The glow seeped through. As we turned to climb back up the stairwell, I looked one last time at the stone table. A girl had died there. Not once, not twice, over and over, and East Briar had built its fortune on their light. The factory changed after that Sunday. It breathed differently, quieter in the daytime, heavier at night. Mr. Camp watched us more closely. The other men in coats did the same. Elsie, a girl from Table 3, was dragged out during breakfast without any warning or explanation. On the 17th night, they locked all of the doors, not just the factory gates or the dormitory doors, starting with the lights. After dinner, the gas lamps flickered, then choked out one by one as if smothered by invisible hands. The pipes hissed, then silenced, and the halls dimmed to pitch. We assumed it was a failure because the system was outdated and breakdowns were common. But then came the bolts. You could hear them groaning into place, one after another. Iron sliding into iron. Heavy clasps being latched shut from the outside. By 8 Huzzer, we realized no one was coming back. No watchmen, no guards, no food deliveries, no way out. Daisy tried to lift the window latch, welded shut. Edith banged on the dormitory door until her knuckles bled. Nothing moved. And then, we heard them. Voices from the lower levels. Not shouts, not commands, whispers rising from beneath the floorboards. It started with just one soft, rhythmic, almost melodic, then 2 more, then 4. The language was wrong, not words, more like chanting through cracked teeth. And then the glowing began. It wasn't the gas lamps. It was the girls. One by one, shapes in the dark began to glimmer. A shoulder here, a cheekbone there, gums that lit like hot coals when mouths opened in sleep. I held Violet's journal against my chest and felt my own breath tighten because I could see it too on me. The faintest. Outline beneath my nails, behind my eyes, like something had moved in during the night and made itself at home. Across the room, Edith stood frozen, her face pale, her lips parted, and in front of her a girl I didn't know well. Nellie maybe stood swaying on her feet, glowing from head to toe. Her eyes were gone, not removed, just replaced. Twin spheres of dull green fire where pupils used to be. She opened her mouth and whispered, "Let there be light." And suddenly, the others answered her. Every glowing girl turned toward the center of the room as if drawn by the same silent command. They whispered in unison, "Let it feed. Allow it to burn. Let it remember." Edith grabbed my arm. Her nails dug in hard. "We're not making it till morning. They say the fire began near Furnace B, but I know that's not true because I was in the dormitory when it started barefoot, heart hammering, surrounded by mouths that glowed and whispered things I couldn't understand." Edith clutched my hand. Daisy was behind, us crying without tears. And then it happened. A light, not glow, not phosphor. Flame, real red-gold flame, blooming under the doorway like a sudden sunrise in reverse. The floorboards hissed, then cracked. Smoke seeped in through the cracks around the walls, thick and sour. And the girls who had been glowing started to scream. The sound wasn't human, it wasn't fear. It was rage, as if something had been interrupted mid-ritual, as if the fire wasn't their end, but their betrayal. One by one, they dropped to the floor, thrashing, not burning, combusting. Their bodies flared, then crumbled to ash in seconds. Edith shoved me toward the window. "We get out now, but it's sealed." She didn't answer. She just picked up a wooden stool and slammed it against the pane. Once, twice, the glass cracked. Smoke poured in. I saw the yard black and sky embers falling like snow. And in the distance, the east wing in full blaze. Daisy pushed through next. We helped her over the sill boots, slipping. Then me, then Edith. We ran past the chapel shed, past the supply, carts, over fences, and through ditches until the factory was just a silhouette behind a curtain of orange flame. We didn't stop until dawn. The town awoke to sirens, steamers, buckets, shouts, but Eastbriar Matchworks was gone. All 3 main buildings collapsed inward like a dying animal curling into itself. They said it was faulty gas lines. They said the girls died in their sleep. But I remember what the papers didn't say, that 13 bodies were recovered from the ashes, charred, twisted, but 7 of. Edith and I watched from the edge of Durlow Hill as they pulled the bodies out sheet by scorched sheet. Daisy couldn't stop trembling. "They were trying to feed it," she whispered. "I didn't ask what it was, I already knew. They had no heads, just blackened torsos, mouths melted open mid-scream, and empty sockets where something once glowed. None of them were Maura, none were Bridget, and none were Violet." Justice and I, Ellie Tams, and Match Girl Survivor were referred to as fortunate. But I didn't feel fortunate when I coughed up white dust for weeks afterward, when my gums peeled like parchment, or when the skin behind my eyes itched at night like it remembered something my mind didn't. They let us go without any questions, trials, or compensation, and the factory owners, 3 men from London who had never set foot on the floor, distributed small amounts to the families, and the newspapers commended them for their kindness, and the Violet Gray's Journal, Maura Hale's scorched meal token, and a small molar tooth that was still glowing were all in my satchel, wrapped in the hem of my old factory apron. I returned to Durlow by cart alone. Edith went south to Birmingham to stay with a cousin. Daisy never left the parish infirmary, and I visited her once. She didn't speak, just rocked slowly, lips moving without sound. My mother's cottage beneath the crooked lilac tree, 3 feet deep, wrapped in linen. I said no prayer because I didn't know if it was something sacred or something watching. My own glow never came. The line in Violet's journal haunted me. Some girls light up before they go, some don't. Perhaps I had been passed over. Perhaps I hadn't ripened enough. Or maybe, just maybe, it remembered me. There are nights I wake up certain I'm not alone. Not in the cottage, not in the dark, but in me. Like something from. The furnace room made its way out in smoke and found a new place to wait. And on those nights when the wind howls through the rafters and the hearth grows cold too quickly, I swear I hear them. The ones who glowed whispering just outside the edge of sleep. Let the light feed. Let the light remember. The official inquest into the East Briar fire opened on April 3, 1891, almost 3 years to the day after the flames had gutted the factory and turned 13 girls to ash. It lasted 9 hours. No witness testimonies were taken from surviving workers. No mention was made of the locked doors, the missing girls, or the glowing bodies pulled from the rubble. The final report was 1 page long. Cause of fire: faulty gas main near Furnace B. Casualties unfortunate but unavoidable. Recommendation area to be cleared for public safety. No further investigation required. And with that, the files were closed, literally, stamped in red wax and locked in a municipal archive room beneath the city clerk's hall. But not everything was sealed because one of the examining physicians, a junior coroner named Dr. Alton Reeves, kept a journal of his own. It was never submitted to the inquiry. It was never meant to be read. But in 1916, after his death, his grandson donated the contents of his attic trunk to the local historical society. Among it, patient sketches, bone samples, and a thin notebook labeled E.B. Postmortem Anomalies. Inside, written in slanted, shaking hand, the bones recovered from the site exhibited unusual luminescence when placed in darkness, not merely reflective, but emissive. The light did not fade, it pulsed. I examined the jaw of subject 4B. Despite total tissue loss, the molars retained an inner glow, not unlike phosphorus, but it is not phosphorus. I tested no match in my charts. Furthermore, the marrow of subject 7D was crystallized, not calcified. Crystallized as if heat had not destroyed them, but transformed them. What mechanism could do this? No fire burns clean through memory. He never signed the last page. Instead, he drew a crude sketch, a matchstick burning from both ends. A mouth wide open, carved in the center, and beneath it, a word scratched so hard into the paper it tore. I fell that notebook vanished in 1923. Archivists claimed it was lost in a flood. But the clerk who processed the donation, a Miss Harriet Bauer, left behind a letter to her sister dated June 12, 1916. I don't sleep well since reading that doctor's notes. Sometimes I see flickers in the corners of the room. And last night something whispered from the matchbox. It used your name. they built. A shopping arcade on the site in 1984. Glass ceiling, escalators, a sandwich shop where Furnace B used to be. They called it the Breyer Center. Bright colors, clean lines. Nothing remained of soot or stone, except, of course, for what was underneath. In 2007, during a foundation retrofit, a construction crew discovered a void beneath the main stairwell, a sealed cavity beneath 2 feet of concrete and brick. They expected to find drainage issues. What they found was a box, oak, unmarked, bound in rusted wire. No one claimed it. It wasn't listed in any records. The city ordered it opened. Inside 14 teeth, each laid carefully on a strip of black cloth. Machler incisor canine, different sizes, different stages of decay, but all of them still glowing, faint green, white, like the light from an old lantern seen through fog. They were sent to a university lab for testing. The teeth contained no trace of phosphorus, no radium, no element known to produce sustained luminescence. One of the researchers left the lab, after witnessing them glow under sealed vacuum conditions. He would not speak of it again. Tucked beneath the cloth was a brittle scrap of parchment. Words written in black wax faded, but still legible. We lit your streets. We lit your homes. We lit your bones. And still you did not say our names. We will wait. We will glow until someone finally sees us. There was no signature, just initials scratched faintly into the corner. V, Gem, M, H, B, C, D, R, L, T, N, M, E, T. I don't know who opened the box. I don't. I'm aware of its current location, but occasionally, late at night, when I walk by the Breyer Center and notice the green emergency lights illuminating the hallways, I wonder if some of the lights might not be powered by electricity. Perhaps they remember, or perhaps they wait for someone to whisper, "Let the light rest. Let the names be said." Because the match girls burned and burned and burned, and no one ever told their story until